Tonight, there is nowhere you need to be. Nothing to solve. Nothing to finish. Nothing waiting for your attention beyond this quiet moment. The world can continue without you for a little while. Its clocks will keep turning. Its cities will remain awake. Its endless conversations will drift through the night. But for now, you have been invited somewhere far quieter, far older, far gentler. Take one slow breath. Hold it for only a moment. Now let it leave as softly as a wave returning to the shore. Very good. Take another. Notice how your shoulders begin to settle. How your hands no longer feel the need to hold anything. How even your thoughts seem willing to move a little more slowly. There is nothing you need to imagine. Only listen. Everything else will arrive in its own time. Far above the sleeping earth, where the atmosphere grows thin enough for stars to remain visible even before sunset, a single spacecraft waits without making a sound. Its name is the Serenity. You remember it. Or perhaps it remembers you. The graceful vessel hangs quietly in low orbit. Its silver hull reflects the pale curve of the Earth below. No roaring engines disturb the silence. No flashing lights demand attention. Only a gentle blue glow escapes from the ion drives resting beneath its wings. The ship seems less like a machine, and more like a promise. A promise that somewhere beyond the familiar sky, there are still peaceful places waiting to be discovered. A soft voice welcomes you. Calm, warm, patient. The same mysterious navigator whose face is never fully revealed. Not because they are hiding, but because, somehow, every traveler imagines them differently. Welcome back. The words arrive almost like a whisper carried across still water. I've been expecting you. You step forward. The boarding bridge extends without a sound. Each step feels lighter than the one before. Behind you, the earth continues turning. Ahead, the stars wait with endless patience. Inside the Serenity, everything feels familiar. The lighting is warm amber. The walls curve gently without sharp corners. Large observation windows stretch from floor to ceiling, offering uninterrupted views of the universe beyond. There are no alarms. No hurried voices. Only the soft hum of life support systems quietly breathing alongside you. The air carries the faint scent of cedar wood and fresh rain. Somehow, the ship always smells like the beginning of a peaceful journey. The navigator gestures toward a comfortable reclining chair positioned beside the panoramic window. Please, they say gently, make yourself at home. You settle into the chair. It adjusts almost imperceptibly to support your body. A soft blanket rests across your legs. Its fabric feels surprisingly warm, as though it has already been waiting for you. The observation window slowly darkens to reduce the brightness of the stars. Outside, the earth fills nearly half the sky. White clouds swirl across deep blue oceans. Golden city lights shimmer across the night side of continents. Thin ribbons of lightning flicker silently inside distant storms. From here, every border has disappeared. every road, every nation, every disagreement. Only one beautiful world remains. The navigator quietly sits nearby. Neither of you speaks for several moments. Silence has become your oldest companion. Eventually, they smile. Tonight, we leave behind libraries. You glance toward them. And where are we going? Their eyes turn toward the endless stars. To an ocean. The answer seems almost too simple. An ocean beyond Orion. The name settles softly inside your thoughts. You have crossed nebulae. Walked among forgotten civilizations. Read memories preserved between the stars. Yet somehow, the idea of a single peaceful ocean feels wonderfully mysterious. The navigator continues. There is a planet where no continent has ever risen above the waves. You imagine it. An entire world wrapped in water. No mountains. No deserts. No forests. Only an endless sea beneath an unfamiliar sky. It has circled its quiet star for nearly 6 billion years. The voice remains calm. Long enough for life to discover extraordinary ways of becoming gentle. The ship remains perfectly still. There is no countdown. No launch sequence. No dramatic announcement. Instead, the navigator simply places one hand upon the control console. The ion engines awaken. Not with thunder, but with a soft vibration so gentle you almost mistake it for your own heartbeat. Outside the window, the stars begin moving almost imperceptibly. The earth slowly drifts beneath the ship. Clouds slide silently across the oceans. The moon waits in the distance like an old friend preparing to greet your journey. You barely notice the moment when the voyage truly begins. Perhaps the most meaningful departures are always the quietest ones. The navigator dims the cabin lights another little step. Before we travel farther, they say softly, let us leave behind everything that has grown heavy. You close your eyes. Not because you are tired. Because it feels natural. The voice becomes slower. Gentler. Notice your breathing. You do. It moves like small waves reaching a peaceful shore. No effort. No urgency. Simply arriving. And returning. Notice your feet. The warmth of the blanket surrounds them. They have carried you through many days. A pause. They may rest now. Your legs gradually become lighter. Your hands soften. Your shoulders quietly release burdens you hadn't realized they were still holding. The muscles around your eyes relax. Even your jaw seems content to become still. The navigator continues speaking with long spaces between each sentence, allowing every word to settle. Outside this window, they whisper, the universe has never been in a hurry. Stars are born over millions of years. Galaxies drift together across billions. Even light itself travels patiently through unimaginable distances. Perhaps you, too, may slow down. The ship gently leaves Earth's orbit. No sudden acceleration. Only a graceful unfolding of distance. The blue planet becomes slightly smaller, then slightly smaller again. Its beauty does not diminish. It simply changes. You continue watching. The ocean shimmer beneath sunlight. Clouds cast gentle shadows upon continents. Somewhere below, people are waking. Others are falling asleep. Children are laughing. Rain is falling. Birds are beginning another morning. Life continues. You carry none of it with you. Not because it no longer matters. Because, for a little while, it no longer asks anything of you. Ahead, the stars become brighter. The darkness becomes deeper. The silence becomes richer. The navigator looks toward the distant constellation of Orion. Barely visible from this angle. Our destination, they say, lies far beyond those familiar stars. You nod. Not out of understanding, but out of trust. The moon slowly grows larger before you. Its silver plains glow beneath quiet sunlight. Its ancient craters wait patiently, just as they have for billions of years. Tomorrow, you will pass beside it. Beyond that, the rivers of starlight await. And somewhere far beyond Orion, an endless ocean is already breathing beneath an alien dawn. The journey has begun. There is nowhere to rush. Only farther to wander. By the time the Earth had become smaller than your memory expected, you realized something gentle had happened. You were no longer thinking about home. Not because you had forgotten it. Because you trusted it would still be there when you returned. Outside the great observation window, the blue world floated peacefully behind the Serenity. Its oceans still shimmered beneath sunlight. Its clouds continued their endless dance. Yet from this distance, storms no longer appeared frightening. They looked like brushstrokes painted across a living canvas. The navigator stood quietly beside the window. The farther we travel, they said, the kinder perspective becomes. You watched the Earth for another long moment. Cities could no longer be seen. Neither could borders. Only one beautiful sphere suspended within infinite darkness. Perhaps the universe had always encouraged unity. It simply required enough distance to reveal it. The ion engines continued their nearly silent work. No vibration disturbed the cabin. No sensation of speed reached your body. Yet every passing minute carried you thousands of kilometers farther from the familiar. Ahead, the moon slowly emerged. At first, it appeared no larger than a pearl resting upon black velvet. But gradually, patiently, its silver face grew brighter, more detailed. Ancient impact basins became visible. Long mountain ranges cast delicate shadows across the surface. Bright rays stretched outward from youthful craters like frozen sunlight. The navigator smiled. Our oldest companion. You nodded. The moon had watched every civilization that ever gazed upward. It had witnessed the first campfires, the first telescopes, the first dreams of flight, and eventually, the first footsteps beyond Earth. Now, it quietly welcomed another traveler. Not as an explorer seeking conquest, but as a guest passing peacefully through. The cabin lights dimmed even further. The stars outside brightened until the sky seemed impossibly crowded. Without Earth's atmosphere, they did not twinkle. They shone with perfect stillness. White stars, blue stars, golden stars, tiny crimson embers, each one sending ancient light across unimaginable distances. Some had begun their journey before humanity learned to write. Some before Earth itself had fully formed. Yet here they were, patiently arriving. The navigator rested one hand upon the smooth console. Our ancestors often believed silence meant emptiness. A pause. But space teaches something different. You listened. Silence is simply where everything important becomes easier to hear. The words lingered. Outside, the moon continued growing. Soon its great gray plains filled the entire window. The famous Mare Tranquillitatis, the Sea of Tranquility, spread gently across the landscape. How curious, you thought. Even before leaving Earth, humanity had named part of the moon after peace. Perhaps they had always sensed what waited beyond. The Serenity adjusted its course with graceful precision. Tiny blue flashes shimmered briefly from hidden maneuvering thrusters. Almost too delicate to notice. The ship began gliding toward the moon's night side. Slowly, the brilliant sunlight disappeared behind the curved horizon. Darkness embraced the surface. Yet it was not complete. Earthlight bathed the landscape in soft blue. The distant glow of your home reflected gently across silent craters. The navigator spoke quietly. Every world receives light from another. You looked toward the glowing Earth hanging above the lunar horizon. The moon borrowed its gentle blue from the planet that had once borrowed its tides. Nothing in the universe truly stood alone. You drifted closer. Ancient mountains passed beneath the ship. Towering peaks untouched by wind. Valleys that had remained unchanged for billions of years. No rivers carved them. No rain softened their edges. Only time. And silence. The navigator invited you toward the forward observation deck. The curved window there offered a breathtaking view. Ahead stretched the far side of the moon. The hemisphere that never faces Earth. A place hidden from human eyes for nearly all of history. Its surface appeared far more rugged. Covered with countless overlapping craters. A record of ancient impacts preserved perfectly in the absence of atmosphere. You found unexpected beauty in the scars. Each crater marked an encounter. A memory. A moment written into stone. The navigator noticed your expression. Even worlds remember. You smiled softly. The sentence felt strangely familiar. Perhaps every journey eventually circles back to truths already known. The Serenity continued its quiet flight. The moon slowly drifted beneath you. Then beside you. Then behind. Its silver light gradually softened into the darkness. For several peaceful minutes, there was nothing ahead except stars. The kind of darkness that exists only beyond planets. Not frightening. Not lonely. Simply vast. You noticed something unusual. The stars no longer seemed scattered randomly. Delicate rivers of light flowed between them. Faint bands of glowing dust crossed the heavens. Subtle structures hidden from Earth's brighter skies. The navigator followed your gaze. Interplanetary dust. Tiny particles. Some no larger than grains of smoke. Others ancient fragments left behind by wandering comets. They drifted quietly around the sun, scattering its distant light into delicate streams almost invisible to the human eye. They are the first rivers of our journey. The navigator smiled. Tomorrow, they whispered, we will sail among them. You rested comfortably beneath the warm blanket. The chair gently adjusted as the ship continued accelerating toward the outer solar system. No effort was required from you. Only observation. Only breathing. Only allowing the universe to unfold one quiet moment at a time. Behind you, the moon had become another silver star. Earth shimmered nearby. Two small lights traveling together through the darkness. Home. And its oldest companion. Ahead. Orion slowly rose beyond the bow of the Serenity. The great hunter stood silently among countless stars. Beyond those familiar points of light. Far beyond human maps. Waited an ocean that had never known a shoreline. The navigator spoke one final time before silence gently returned. Every voyage begins by leaving something familiar. Their eyes remained upon the distant stars. But the finest journeys. A warm pause settled across the cabin. Teach us that wonder was quietly waiting just beyond the next horizon. The engines hummed almost like a distant lullaby. The stars drifted slowly across the observation window. And together, you crossed the moonlit silence. The moon was now far behind. Earth had become a brilliant sapphire star, glowing quietly in the darkness. For a long time, you simply watched it. It seemed impossible that every forest, every mountain, every ocean, every person you had ever known, all rested within that single point of blue light. The farther the Serenity traveled, the less the Earth appeared to shrink. Instead, it seemed to become more precious. The navigator noticed the quiet smile on your face. It is a curious thing, they said softly. The universe never makes home feel smaller. A gentle pause. It teaches us how extraordinary home has always been. You nodded without speaking. The stars ahead slowly brightened. The sun, though still powerful, no longer filled the sky with its familiar brilliance. Its light had softened into something gentler, warmer. The solar system itself seemed calmer here, more spacious. The silence between worlds grew deeper with every passing hour. The ion engines continued their patient song. A sound so quiet it was less a noise than a presence. Like a heartbeat heard through a peaceful dream. The observation window gradually adjusted its filters. At first, you wondered why. Then, you saw them. Delicate ribbons of golden light stretched across the darkness. Not straight. Not uniform. They curved gracefully through space like slow-moving rivers. Some shimmered with pale amber. Others glowed faintly in silver. Together they formed an invisible network flowing between the planets. You leaned forward. What are they? The navigator smiled. The oldest rivers in the solar system. You looked again. There was no water. No flowing current. Only light. Countless tiny particles drifted silently through space. Dust. Ice crystals. Microscopic fragments left behind by ancient comets. Remnants of collisions that had happened hundreds of millions of years ago. The particles were almost impossibly small. Yet together, they caught the distant sunlight. And suddenly, space itself appeared to flow. The navigator continued. Long before planets were born, they whispered. Clouds like these filled the young solar system. You watched the glowing streams with growing wonder. Tiny grains, each no larger than a grain of sand. Yet together they painted rivers visible across millions of kilometers. It reminded you of beaches on Earth. No single grain creates a shoreline. But together, they shape continents. The Serenity entered the first river of starlight. Nothing struck the hull. Nothing rattled. The particles were simply too small. Yet outside the observation window, the view transformed completely. The darkness became luminous. Tiny sparks drifted slowly past the ship. Each one reflected the sun from a different angle. It felt less like flying through space, and more like sailing through an endless snowfall made entirely of light. The navigator dimmed the cabin until only the stars remained visible. For several peaceful minutes, neither of you spoke. The glowing dust surrounded the ship on every side. The particles moved so slowly that time itself seemed to relax. You reached toward the window. Of course, the dust remained outside. Yet somehow, it felt close enough to touch. The navigator's voice drifted gently through the silence. Every one of these particles has traveled an extraordinary distance. Some had once belonged to comets that circled the sun before humanity existed. Others had been born when ancient asteroids gently collided. Some had wandered through space for billions of years. Patiently. Quietly. Never knowing they would one day become part of this beautiful river. You smiled. Perhaps even the smallest things carry remarkable journeys. Ahead, the glowing stream widened. Its delicate curves stretched farther than you could see. From this angle, it resembled the Milky Way itself. A galaxy mirrored within a solar system. Large patterns repeating themselves in smaller forms. The navigator noticed your gaze. The universe enjoys familiar shapes. Spiral galaxies. Whirlpools. Shells. Hurricanes. Flower petals. Even rivers. Nature seemed to write the same poetry in different languages. The Serenity reduced its speed slightly. Not because danger lay ahead. Because beauty deserved time. You watched tiny crystals drift lazily past. Some flashed briefly with shades of blue. Others glimmered gold. Occasionally, one reflected the distant earth before disappearing back into darkness. A thought quietly entered your mind. Perhaps some of this dust had once fallen upon Earth's oceans as meteorites. Perhaps tiny fragments of these ancient rivers still rested beneath forests, inside mountains, or upon forgotten beaches. The universe had always been visiting home, long before people looked upward. The navigator walked slowly toward another observation window on the port side. You followed. From this angle, the rivers became even more astonishing. Instead of one glowing stream, you saw dozens, intertwining, separating, joining again, like delicate veins carrying light through the heart of the solar system. No map could fully capture their elegance. No photograph could contain their quiet motion. Only patience revealed their true shape. For a while, the two of you simply watched. Then the navigator asked, "What do you think rivers are for?" You considered the question. To carry something. The navigator smiled warmly. Exactly. They looked back toward the glowing streams. Water carries life. A gentle pause. These carry memory. You tilted your head slightly. Memory? The history of our solar system. Every tiny particle told part of an ancient story. A comet passing too close to the sun. An asteroid gently breaking apart. A newborn planet gathering its first oceans. Nothing was ever completely lost. Everything left behind small traces. The rivers remembered them all. The ship continued gliding forward. Hours passed almost unnoticed. The glowing dust gradually became thinner. The brilliant streams slowly faded into isolated sparkles. Eventually, only the stars remained. Yet they seemed brighter now. As though the rivers had quietly taught your eyes to notice light more carefully. Far ahead, the familiar stars of Orion slowly rose higher above the bow. The great constellation no longer looked like a distant decoration upon the night sky. It had become a destination. Beyond it, somewhere still hidden within the darkness, waited a blue world with no continents. An ocean without end. The navigator returned to their seat. Our next destination, they whispered, is where the solar system begins to loosen its gentle embrace. You watched Orion shimmer quietly among the stars. Soon, the familiar neighborhood of the sun would begin to fade behind you. And beyond those ancient stars, another sea was already waiting. Not of dust, not of light, but of water. An entire world breathing beneath an alien sky. The rivers of starlight slowly disappeared behind the Serenity. Their quiet glow remained with you. Like a memory. Like a dream. Like the first gentle promise of an ocean still waiting beyond the stars. The rivers of starlight slowly faded behind the Serenity. Their golden glow became little more than delicate threads woven into the darkness. Eventually, even those disappeared. Only the stars remained. They surrounded the ship in every direction. Above, below, ahead, behind. For the first time since leaving Earth, you could no longer feel where up was. There was only space. Endless. Silent. Perfectly still. You rested comfortably beneath the warm blanket. The cabin lights had dimmed almost completely. Only a few soft amber lamps remained, casting gentle reflections across the curved walls. The navigator stood before the panoramic window, hands folded quietly behind their back. Neither of you felt the need to speak. Sometimes, wonder asks only for company, not conversation. Hours drifted by unnoticed. The ion engines whispered their patient lullaby. Outside, the sun had become another bright star. Still unmistakably brilliant. Yet no longer dominating the heavens. Its warmth reached you only as ancient light crossing unimaginable distances. The solar system now felt less like a home, and more like a quiet island floating in a much larger ocean. The navigator finally broke the silence. Do you see him? You followed their gaze. Ahead, the familiar constellation slowly emerged. 3 bright stars rested in a perfectly straight line. Above them, 2 brilliant shoulders. Below them, 2 powerful knees. The unmistakable outline of Orion. For thousands of years, people on Earth had looked toward this constellation and imagined a mighty hunter. Different cultures had given him different names. Yet almost everyone had noticed the same remarkable pattern. The navigator smiled. It is comforting. What is? That even across centuries. They whispered. People continued looking upward. You watched Orion grow brighter. Of course. The constellation was only an illusion. Its stars did not truly stand beside one another. Some were hundreds of light years away. Others much farther. Only from Earth's perspective did they appear connected. The universe quietly reminded you that beauty often depends upon where one chooses to stand. The navigator gently touched the navigation console. A holographic star map blossomed into the air between you. Thousands of tiny lights floated silently above the controls. The familiar stars of Orion glowed brightest. One by one, their names appeared. Betelgeuse. A colossal red supergiant nearing the end of its life. Large enough that, if placed where the sun now rests, it would extend beyond the orbit of Mars. Its crimson light shimmered softly. Not fierce. Not dying. Simply old. Patient. Wise. Nearby burned Rigel. Blue-white. Brilliant. Among the most luminous stars visible from Earth. Young compared with Betelgeuse. Radiating astonishing energy into the surrounding darkness. The navigator's voice became almost musical. One teaches us that endings can be beautiful. They pointed toward Betelgeuse. The other reminds us that beginnings can shine just as brightly. Rigel glowed beside it. Old stars. Young stars. Sharing the same constellation only from your point of view. Life often arranges itself the same way. Different journeys. Different ages. One shared horizon. The Serenity continued forward. Very slowly. Orion ceased looking like a familiar pattern. The stars began drifting apart. The hunter dissolved. Its shoulders separated. Its famous belt stretched wider. The constellation quietly unraveled. You watched with fascination. Something humanity had recognized for thousands of years disappeared simply because you had changed your perspective. The navigator noticed your expression. No constellation survives forever. You smiled softly. Not from every direction. They nodded. But the stars themselves remain. The sentence lingered gently within you. Perhaps labels fade. Stories evolve. Maps change. Yet reality continues peacefully beneath them all. Beyond Orion. The sky transformed. Regions once hidden behind brighter stars slowly revealed themselves. Clouds of interstellar hydrogen glowed faintly crimson. Dark ribbons of cosmic dust floated like ink across the Milky Way. Distant clusters sparkled with thousands of newborn suns. The observation window quietly enhanced the subtle colors. Nothing became exaggerated. Only visible. You leaned forward. The galaxy no longer resembled scattered stars. It looked alive. Breathing. The navigator dimmed the holographic map. You are seeing what few travelers ever witness. You remained silent. There seemed little reason to interrupt the universe. Far ahead, a tiny blue point appeared. At first, you mistook it for another ordinary star. But something about its light felt different. Softer. Richer. Not white. Not blue. Turquoise. The navigator smiled before you could ask. There. The tiny point shimmered gently. Our destination. You stared at it. So small. For now. A pause. It has waited 6 billion years. Another few days will not trouble it. The thought made you laugh quietly. The universe possessed extraordinary patience. Perhaps travelers should learn the same. The Serenity adjusted its course by only a fraction of a degree. Almost imperceptibly. Yet over millions of kilometers? Such a tiny movement would carry the ship precisely where it needed to go. You found unexpected comfort in that. Life often changes the same way. Small choices. Patiently repeated. Eventually leading somewhere unimaginable. Hours continued flowing past like calm water. The blue point slowly brightened. Still only a star. Yet now unmistakably different from every other light around it. You noticed faint reflections dancing across the observation window. Tiny pulses. Like sunlight glimmering upon distant waves. The navigator watched them with quiet satisfaction. Even from here. They whispered. Its oceans are greeting us. You looked again. Surely the planet remained too distant. Yet somehow, the light truly seemed alive. Moving. Shimmering. As though an entire world of water was already reflecting the ancient sunlight of its quiet star. Neither of you spoke again for a long while. There was no need. Some destinations deserve silence long before arrival. Behind you, Orion slowly became another constellation among countless others. Ahead, the turquoise light grew ever so slightly brighter. Tomorrow, you would leave familiar star maps behind. Tomorrow, for the first time, You would see a world where no continent had ever interrupted the sea. The engines hummed gently beneath your feet. The stars drifted almost imperceptibly across the great window. And somewhere beyond the quiet darkness, an endless ocean was already breathing beneath an alien dawn. When you first noticed the planet, it was no larger than a tiny turquoise pearl resting against the velvet darkness. Hours passed. Then more. Little by little, the pearl became a marble. The marble became a world. No dramatic announcement marked your arrival. The navigator never said, "Asterisk, we have reached our destination." Asterisk. There was no need. The planet introduced itself in its own quiet way, by growing steadily larger with every passing hour. The stars behind it slowly disappeared as its gentle blue disk expanded across the observation window. The Serenity reduced its speed almost imperceptibly. The engines continued their familiar whisper. Even after crossing unimaginable distances, the ship refused to disturb the silence. The navigator stood beside you. This world has no official name. You looked away from the window for only a moment. No one named it? They tried. A soft smile appeared. But every expedition chose something different. You turned back toward the growing planet. So what do you call it? The navigator's answer came almost like a breath. The ocean. Nothing more. Nothing less. Perhaps no other name was necessary. As the distance continued to close, details slowly emerged. At first, only shades of blue, deep sapphire, pale turquoise, soft emerald. Then, subtle patterns appeared. Great swirling currents wrapped around the entire globe. Unlike Earth's clouds, these graceful spirals flowed beneath the atmosphere itself. They were oceans moving across oceans. Currents so immense that some stretched nearly halfway around the planet. You watched in quiet wonder. The navigator gently enlarged the image. There are no continents. You already knew this. Yet seeing it was something entirely different. Not a single mountain pierced the waves. Not one island interrupted the endless sea. No coastlines. No beaches. No cliffs. Only water. An entire planet breathing through a single ocean. Clouds drifted lazily overhead. Their reflections shimmered across the surface like drifting veils of silver silk. The atmosphere glowed faintly around the planet's edge. A thin blue halo. Delicate. Fragile. Beautiful. Just like Earth's. You smiled. Perhaps every living world wears light the same way. The navigator noticed. Life enjoys thin atmospheres. They looked thoughtfully toward the glowing horizon. Too thick. And stars disappear. Too thin. And oceans cannot remain. Somewhere between. Life finds its balance. The Serenity continued its gentle approach. The planet now filled nearly half the observation window. Its beauty became almost overwhelming. Sunlight danced across vast stretches of calm water. Elsewhere, great storms slowly turned across the hemisphere. Not violent. Majestic. Cloud systems thousands of kilometers wide rotated with graceful patience. The navigator adjusted another display. A transparent map appeared beside the window. Tiny lines traced the movement of the planet's great currents. Warm rivers flowed from the equator toward the poles. Cold currents returned beneath them. An endless circulation. The heartbeat of an oceanic world. It has been flowing. The navigator whispered. For nearly 6 billion years. You try to imagine such a span of time. The oldest mountains on Earth had risen and disappeared. Species had come and gone. Stars themselves had changed. Yet these currents had continued their slow journey without interruption. The ocean remembered. The ship entered orbit just before local sunrise. The change happened so gradually that you almost missed it. The planet's curved horizon drifted beneath the vessel. The darkness below softened. A thin golden line appeared. Then another. Slowly. The first sunlight spilled across the endless sea. You held your breath. The water became liquid gold. Not in one place. Everywhere. Millions upon millions of tiny waves reflected the rising star. The entire planet seemed to awaken. There were no cities catching the morning light. No mountain peaks glowing before the valleys. No forests emerging from shadow. Only the ocean. Boundless. Peaceful. Alive. The navigator quietly dimmed every display inside the cabin. No information interrupted the view. No numbers. No maps. Only the planet. Sometimes, knowledge is best received without explanation. The Serenity completed one slow orbit. You noticed subtle changes in the sea below. Some regions shimmered deep cobalt blue. Others glowed almost emerald. Far to the south, vast circles of lighter turquoise drifted beneath the surface. What are those? The navigator looked carefully. Floating forests. You remembered. The next stage of the journey. Entire ecosystems drifting freely upon the ocean. Forests without soil. Without roots touching land. Tomorrow, you would descend among them. Another region caught your attention. The surface there appeared strangely smooth. Almost like polished glass. No waves. No ripples. Only perfect reflection. The calm basin, the navigator said softly. It has remained peaceful for longer than recorded history. You smiled. Even oceans, it seemed, possessed quiet places where they rested. The ship continued circling the planet. Day slowly became evening. The stars slipped beneath the western horizon. Twilight spread gently across the waters. Then, something extraordinary happened. The ocean began to glow. Not brightly. Not all at once. Tiny lights slowly awakened beneath the surface. At first, only scattered sparks. Then thousands. Then millions. Soft blue. Gentle green. Hints of violet. The entire night side of the planet shimmered like the sky above it. You leaned closer to the window. Bioluminescence? The navigator nodded. The largest light show in this part of the galaxy. Countless microscopic organisms greeted the coming night by releasing gentle light into the water. Every wave became luminous. Every current painted glowing ribbons across the darkness. From orbit, the planet resembled a living sapphire breathing beneath the stars. You found yourself unable to speak. The beauty asked for nothing. Not admiration. Not understanding. Only quiet attention. For a long while, that was exactly what you offered. Eventually, the navigator broke the silence. Many explorers searched this world for intelligent cities. You looked toward them. They found something else. The glowing ocean slowly rotated beneath the ship. A civilization. They whispered. That learned intelligence is not always built from stone. The words lingered. You looked once more toward the luminous sea. Somewhere beneath those glowing waters, life had been patiently evolving for billions of years. Not above the waves. Within them. Tomorrow, for the first time, the Serenity would leave the stars behind. Tomorrow, you would descend into the endless blue. Toward forests that floated without roots. Toward songs carried through water instead of air. Toward gentle giants older than memory. The planet completed another quiet rotation beneath your ship. Its glowing nights slowly welcomed another dawn. You rested comfortably beneath the warm blanket. The observation window remained filled with nothing but ocean. No horizon felt more peaceful. No destination had ever seemed so inviting. Far below, the sea continued breathing. Patiently. Quietly. As it had for 6 billion years. Waiting. Not for conquerors. Not for heroes. Only for travelers willing to listen. Morning arrived without birdsong. Without rustling leaves. Without the distant murmur of rivers. Instead, the first light of the planet's quiet star spread slowly across an endless sea. Golden reflections drifted over gentle waves. The horizon formed a perfect circle around the Serenity. For the first time since leaving Earth, there was no land anywhere. Not ahead. Not behind. Not even as a faint silhouette in the distance. Only water. A world that had never known a shoreline. The ship floated silently a few hundred meters above the surface. Its engines whispered so softly that the ocean below remained perfectly undisturbed. The navigator stood beside the observation window. This is where our journey truly begins. You watched the sunlight deepen into warm shades of gold and sapphire. The sea looked impossibly calm. Then, you noticed movement. Far ahead, something dark stretched across the horizon. At first, it resembled a chain of distant islands. But you already knew there could be no islands here. As the Serenity glided closer, the shapes became clearer. Towering columns rose directly from the water. Thousands of them. Tens of thousands. Some reached nearly 300 meters into the sky. Others leaned gently with the rhythm of the waves. Together, They formed a forest unlike anything you had ever imagined. The navigator smiled. The floating forest. The name felt almost too simple. Yet no other words seemed necessary. The ship descended slowly. The scent inside the cabin changed. Fresh. Cool. A hint of salt. Something sweet beneath it. Almost like cedar after rain. The atmosphere processors had opened tiny intake ports, allowing traces of the planet's air to enter the cabin. You took a slow breath. It felt astonishingly clean. The navigator noticed. The oxygen level is slightly higher than Earth's. Another quiet breath. It encourages slower breathing. You smiled. The planet itself seemed designed for peace. The forest continued growing larger. Soon individual structures became visible. They were not trees. Not exactly. Each began as an enormous floating bulb resting upon the water. From that buoyant base rose elegant columns of living tissue, smooth as polished jade. Near their tops, thousands of delicate branches unfurled into broad translucent leaves. The leaves shimmered with shades of emerald and pale turquoise. Sunlight passed through them almost completely. They glowed rather than cast shadows. Gentle waves rolled beneath the floating trunks. Each movement caused the immense canopy to sway gracefully. Not against one another. Together. As though the entire forest breathed with a single rhythm. The navigator slowed the ship even further. The oldest organism here, they whispered, is nearly 100,000 years old. You looked upward. Its crown disappeared into soft morning mist. A living cathedral. Patiently growing through centuries beyond imagination. What keeps them afloat? The navigator enlarged a section of the forest on the display. The floating bulbs beneath the water appeared almost spherical. Inside them, millions of tiny chambers trapped gases produced through photosynthesis. Natural airships. Entire forests drifting gently wherever the great ocean currents carried them. No roots. You said it almost without thinking. The navigator nodded. No soil. No mountains. No valleys. The forest belonged entirely to the sea. Perhaps that was why it moved with such remarkable grace. The Serenity entered the canopy. Immediately, the sunlight changed. Soft green light filtered through countless translucent leaves overhead. Tiny droplets of fresh water condensed upon their surfaces before falling gently back into the ocean below. The sound was almost musical. Drop. Pause. Drop. Somewhere nearby. A slow breeze passed through the canopy. The leaves responded with whispers unlike any forest on earth. Not rustling. Singing. Each broad leaf vibrated ever so slightly. Together they produced long, gentle tones. Barely audible. More felt than heard. The navigator closed their eyes. This forest makes music with the wind. You listened. No melody repeated itself. The harmony shifted constantly as the breeze wandered through different heights of the canopy. It reminded you of distant choirs. Or waves meeting a quiet shore. Or breathing. Perhaps. The forest had spent 100,000 years perfecting the language of peace. The ship drifted lower. Now only a few meters separated the hull from the water. Below, the floating bulbs extended deep into the sea. Fish-like creatures glided quietly between them. Their silver scales reflected shafts of green light filtering through the forest above. Nothing hurried. Nothing fled. Even the smallest creatures seemed to understand there was no danger here. The navigator pointed toward one of the immense trunks. Tiny glowing flowers had begun opening across its surface. Hundreds. Then thousands. Each no larger than your hand. Their petals shimmered with pale blue light despite the morning sun. They bloom every sunrise. The navigator smiled. They close again before evening. You watched delicate insects drift lazily among them. Not flying. Floating. Their transparent wings caught the slightest movement of air beneath the canopy. Each slow motion released tiny clouds of golden pollen. The pollen sparkled briefly before settling upon nearby leaves. The entire forest seemed less like separate organisms, and more like one vast living community. Sharing sunlight. Sharing water. Sharing the gentle currents carrying them across the planet. Hours passed almost unnoticed. The Serenity allowed itself to drift alongside the forest rather than guide it. For the first time, you could no longer tell whether the ship was moving, or whether the forest carried you. Perhaps both. The navigator poured 2 cups of warm herbal tea. The gentle aroma filled the cabin. Neither of you spoke for several peaceful minutes. There was no need. Outside, a family of graceful skygliders emerged from the canopy. Their wide, translucent fins caught the rising warm air above the forest. Without flapping, they soared silently from one towering crown to another. Their shadows drifted slowly across the glowing leaves. One circled the ship briefly. Its enormous dark eyes reflected the Serenity without fear. Then it disappeared once more among the emerald branches. The navigator smiled. They've never known predators from the sky. The sentence carried no sadness. Only quiet wonder. You realized something remarkable. This world had evolved differently. Not because it lacked struggle, but because abundance had encouraged cooperation more often than conflict. Life had discovered another path. The forest itself seemed to embody that lesson. Millions of individual organisms. One shared home. One shared ocean. One shared rhythm. As the afternoon light softened, the great current beneath the forest slowly changed direction. Entire groves began turning almost imperceptibly toward the west. Following the sunlight. Following warmth. Following ancient patterns unchanged for countless generations. The navigator looked toward the horizon. Tomorrow, they whispered, we will meet the oldest singers of this ocean. You remembered the journey ahead. The gentle giants. Creatures so immense that their songs traveled farther than mountains could ever stand. The floating forest slowly receded behind the Serenity. Its emerald canopy faded into the shimmering distance. Yet even after it disappeared beyond the horizon, its quiet music seemed to remain. lingering softly in your thoughts. Like leaves moving in a breeze. Like waves beneath morning light. Like an invitation from a world that had learned, long ago, that the strongest things need never raise their voice. The floating forest disappeared slowly behind the Serenity. Its emerald canopy blended with the horizon until it became impossible to tell where the sea ended and where memory began. For several peaceful hours, there was nothing but open water. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction. Its surface rose and fell with slow, graceful swells. Not waves. Breathing. The planet seemed alive beneath you. The navigator stood quietly beside the forward window. They are near. You looked across the empty sea. There was nothing. Only sunlight dancing upon the water. Then, a circle appeared. Far ahead. Perfectly round. The surface rippled outward in widening rings. Another circle formed beside it. Then another. The disturbances spread silently across the ocean. Too large to have been caused by wind. Too gentle to be storms. The navigator smiled. They've begun greeting one another. You watched the expanding circles overlap. Each ripple traveled for kilometers before dissolving into the calm sea. Moments later, another appeared. Then another. The ocean itself seemed to speak in slow-moving patterns. The Serenity reduced its speed until it drifted almost motionless above the water. The navigator dimmed every instrument. Only the panoramic window remained illuminated by the morning sun. We'll wait. You nodded. Some meetings cannot be hurried. Minutes passed. Perhaps longer. Time had begun behaving differently since arriving on this world. It no longer felt measured by clocks. Only by quiet moments unfolding one after another. Then, without warning, a vast shadow passed beneath the ship. It moved so slowly that at first you mistook it for a cloud. But the sky above was perfectly clear. The shadow continued gliding beneath the surface. Its outline stretched farther than you could follow. Hundreds of meters. Then more. The navigator whispered. There. Your eyes slowly adjusted. The water was astonishingly clear. Sunlight reached deep beneath the surface. Far below, an immense form drifted through the blue. Its body was long and elegant. Its skin shimmered with gentle shades of silver, deep blue, and soft emerald. Tiny patterns of light flowed across its back like moonlight moving through calm water. The creature was enormous. Nearly 30 kilometers from head to tail. Longer than entire mountain ranges on Earth. Yet it moved with extraordinary grace. Each slow movement of its broad fins displaced entire valleys of water. The surrounding sea responded in silent harmony. Schools of smaller creatures followed peacefully beside it. Not fleeing. Traveling together. The navigator spoke almost reverently. The gentle giants. The name felt perfect. No other words could describe them. The great creature approached the surface. Very slowly. Its immense back rose above the water. Not dramatically. Not with violence. simply lifting toward the sunlight. The curve of its body seemed almost like a floating island. Water streamed gently from smooth ridges along its back. Tiny translucent plants had grown there over countless years. Some shimmered pale green. Others bloomed in delicate violet. Small winged creatures rested among them. An entire ecosystem traveled upon the giant's back. The navigator noticed your expression. They carry forests. You smiled. The floating forest had roots in the sea. These forests traveled wherever the giants wandered. The creature continued rising. Finally, it exhaled. Not through a narrow blowhole like whales on Earth, but through hundreds of delicate openings stretching along its spine. Warm mist drifted upward into the morning light. The clouds sparkled with countless tiny rainbows. It hung above the ocean for several long moments before gently falling back into the sea. The Serenity floated quietly within the drifting mist. Tiny droplets touched the observation window. Each one caught the sunlight before slowly sliding away. The navigator closed their eyes. Listen. At first, you heard nothing. Only silence. Then, a single note. So deep, so gentle, that you felt it before you truly heard it. The sound seemed to pass through the water, through the ship, through your own heartbeat. Another note followed. Then another. Long. Slow. Patient. The giant was singing. Its voice rolled through the ocean for thousands of kilometers. Not as a call of loneliness. Not as a warning. Simply as a greeting. Far across the endless sea, another answer arrived. Even deeper. Even older. Then another. And another. Invisible singers scattered across an entire world, each responding in unhurried harmony. The navigator smiled softly. The ocean has no mountains. They looked toward the shimmering horizon. So songs travel farther than footsteps ever could. You listened carefully. The voices overlapped. Some low. Some slightly higher. Together they formed a chorus so vast that no single creature could possibly hear all of it. Yet each giant contributed one quiet note. The ocean completed the melody. Hours drifted past. The gentle giant remained beside the ship, never approaching too closely, never moving away. Its enormous dark eye slowly turned toward the Serenity. For a brief moment, it looked directly at you. There was no fear, no curiosity, only calm recognition, as though travelers had always belonged here. The navigator spoke quietly. They remember every migration. You looked at the immense creature. How old are they? The answer came gently. No one knows. Some scientists believe they lived for thousands of years. Others suspected they never truly stopped growing. The oldest giants might have witnessed civilizations rising on distant planets before humanity learned to shape stone. Perhaps they carried memories older than language itself. The creature slowly began descending once more. As it disappeared beneath the waves, Its luminous patterns remained visible far below, like constellations drifting through an underwater sky. The song continued, growing softer. Not because the giant had stopped singing, because it had become part of the greater chorus stretching across the planet. The Serenity resumed its gentle journey. Behind you, another giant surfaced. Then another beyond it. Then another farther still. The ocean revealed itself. Not empty. Alive. Everywhere. The navigator poured another cup of warm tea. Steam curled lazily into the quiet cabin. They never compete, they whispered. They have enough ocean for everyone. You watched the distant singers. There was no hurry in their movements. No struggle for territory. No race toward tomorrow. Only an endless migration following warm currents around a peaceful world. Perhaps abundance had taught them a lesson that many civilizations spent centuries trying to learn. There is enough beauty to share. Enough sky for every star. Enough sea for every song. The afternoon light slowly softened into gold. Far ahead, the horizon shimmered with strange shapes rising from the water. At first they resembled cliffs. Then towers. Then something entirely unfamiliar. The navigator smiled. The coral cathedrals. Tomorrow, you would enter one of the oldest living cities the ocean had ever grown. Behind you, the voices of the gentle giants continued their endless hymn. Deep, patient, timeless. Their songs followed the Serenity long after the creatures themselves had disappeared beneath the quiet waves. And somewhere beyond the golden horizon, an entire forest of living stone was already waiting beneath the sea. Mars also boasts polar ice caps, made of both water ice and frozen carbon dioxide, a testament to its dynamic, albeit harsh, climate. Night settled gently over the coral cathedrals. Above the ocean, the stars appeared one by one. Below the surface, another sky awakened. Thousands of tiny lights drifted through the water beneath the quiet lagoon. Some glowed sapphire blue. Others shimmered with soft emerald. A few pulsed gently in shades of violet and gold. They moved so gracefully that they seemed less like creatures, and more like stars that had chosen to swim instead of shine. The Serenity hovered motionless above the still water. The navigator stood beside the controls. It is time. You watched as the ship slowly descended. There was no splash. No violent disturbance. A transparent field of shimmering energy unfolded beneath the hull. The sea welcomed the vessel without resistance. For a brief moment, the observation windows were covered by flowing water. Then, the ocean surrounded you completely. Sunlight faded into a soft blue glow. Above, the surface became a silver mirror reflecting distant stars. Below, the unknown opened quietly before you. The Serenity continued its graceful descent. The water remained astonishingly clear. Schools of silver fish drifted peacefully around the ship. None scattered. None fled. They simply adjusted their course, allowing the visitor to pass among them. The deeper you traveled, the quieter everything became. Not silent. Different. The ocean possessed its own kind of stillness. A stillness made of slow currents, distant songs, and gentle movement. The navigator dimmed the cabin lights until only the soft glow of the sea illuminated the room. "It takes a few moments," they whispered, "for human eyes to learn underwater light." You waited. Gradually, the blue darkness began revealing extraordinary detail. Coral towers stretched upward like underwater mountains. Delicate arches connected them. Crystal-like bridges shimmered between enormous living columns. Tiny luminous creatures drifted through open spaces like floating lanterns. The reef was far larger beneath the surface than above it. It was no longer a forest. It was a city. Not built. Grown. Patiently. Over millions of years. The Serenity drifted slowly through one immense archway. Its opening measured nearly 200 meters across. Beyond it, a vast chamber unfolded. Your breath caught. Thousands of glowing spheres floated peacefully throughout the enormous underwater valley. Some no larger than a room. Others larger than entire villages. Each sphere shimmered with soft golden light. Gentle currents carried them slowly between the coral towers. The navigator smiled. The bubble cities. You looked closer. The spheres were not solid. Each was formed from an incredibly thin biological membrane. Inside, clear water remained perfectly still despite the surrounding currents. Tiny structures floated within. Elegant spiral gardens. Living bridges woven from translucent vines. Crystal flowers opening toward gentle shafts of sunlight filtering down from far above. The cities themselves drifted slowly with the ocean. Never fixed. Never trapped. The inhabitants had learned to move with their world instead of resisting it. The Serenity approached one of the largest bubbles. Its surface shimmered like liquid glass. Inside, small luminous beings floated peacefully among graceful gardens. Their bodies were unlike anything you had imagined. Tall and slender. Almost transparent. Soft blue light flowed gently beneath their skin like slow-moving rivers. They possessed no visible mouths. No obvious eyes. Yet whenever two approached one another, their light patterns brightened. Ripples of color traveled across their bodies. The navigator watched quietly. They're speaking. You tilted your head. There are no sounds. They communicate with light. The realization settled gently within you. Across millions of years beneath the sea, where darkness eventually embraces every depth, language itself had become illumination. No shouted words. No hurried conversations. Only changing colors. Shared patiently between neighbors. One of the luminous beings slowly turned toward the Serenity. Its body glowed warm amber. Moments later, others nearby responded with gentle shades of turquoise. The colors spread gracefully through the bubble city. Not as alarm. Not as fear. More like curiosity carried upon waves. The navigator smiled. They know we're here. You watched as one of the beings drifted closer. It stopped just beyond the bubble's delicate membrane. For several long moments, it simply floated there. Its light shifted slowly from blue to green to gold. You felt no sense of being observed, only welcomed. Then, the being gently placed one hand against the inside of the membrane. The navigator looked toward you. They greet strangers with gratitude. You slowly raised your own hand. The transparent wall separated you. Yet somehow, the gesture felt complete. The being's light brightened for only a moment. Then it drifted peacefully away. The city quietly resumed its rhythm. Gardens continued swaying with the currents. Children, if they could be called children, played by weaving delicate ribbons of light through the water. Elders floated together beneath flowering coral canopies. No buildings reached toward the sky. No walls divided one neighborhood from another. Everything remained open, gentle, connected. The Serenity continued deeper into the valley. More bubble cities appeared, each unique. Some surrounded by forests of glowing sea flowers. Others nestled within vast coral arches. A few drifted freely through open water, carried by ancient currents that circled the planet. The navigator explained softly. They never chose one permanent home. You looked around. Why? They discovered long ago. A pause. That home is not a place. It is the people who journey beside you. The sentence lingered. You remembered the library between the stars. Perhaps wisdom always found new ways of expressing itself. Far ahead, the valley widened. Countless bubble cities floated together beneath an immense ceiling of coral branches. From a distance, their gentle lights resembled another galaxy. Stars suspended beneath the sea. The navigator dimmed the last remaining cabin light. Now, only the city illuminated your face. Blue, gold, emerald, violet. Soft waves of color drifted endlessly through the water. No street lamps. No electricity. The civilization itself became its own constellation. You realized something remarkable. Nowhere could you see smoke. Factories. Weapons. Fortifications. Or signs of hurried industry. Their greatest architecture was not built to dominate nature. It had been grown alongside it. The city breathed with the ocean, not against it. Hours passed like quiet dreams. The Serenity never docked, never interrupted, only drifted respectfully through the luminous valleys. Eventually, the bubble cities began growing farther apart. The coral towers became taller. The water deepened into richer shades of blue. The navigator looked toward the darkness below. The current is changing. You followed their gaze. Far beneath the ship, a faint ribbon of silver light slowly flowed through the abyss. It stretched farther than the eye could follow, like a river winding across the ocean floor. The navigator smiled gently. Tomorrow, they whispered, we will follow the luminous current. Behind you, The city beneath the waves slowly faded into the blue distance. Its glowing lights remained visible long after the coral towers disappeared. Like distant stars, quietly reminding every traveler that even in the deepest ocean, civilizations can choose to shine with kindness instead of power. The last lights of the bubble cities slowly disappeared behind the Serenity. For a while, only deep blue water surrounded the ship. The coral towers had become distant silhouettes. The great underwater valleys gave way to a quieter landscape. The ocean seemed wider here. Older. Its silence carried a different feeling. Not the peaceful stillness of a sleeping forest, but the calm confidence of something that had existed long before memory. The Serenity continued descending. Very slowly. Very gently. Sunlight no longer reached this depth. The world outside should have been dark. Instead, it glowed. A faint silver ribbon stretched across the ocean floor. It curved gracefully through the abyss, sometimes narrowing, sometimes widening, always flowing. The navigator rested a hand upon the window. There it is. The luminous current. You watched quietly. From above, it resembled a river of moonlight winding through an endless underwater desert. The ship approached without disturbing the water. As the distance closed, you began noticing movement inside the glowing stream. Millions. No. Billions. Tiny living organisms drifted together in astonishing harmony. Each one no larger than a grain of rice. Each producing a gentle pulse of pale blue light. Alone, their glow would have been invisible. Together, they illuminated an entire ocean. The navigator smiled. One light changes very little. Their eyes remained upon the current. But countless small lights, a warm pause, can guide an entire world. The Serenity entered the edge of the current. Immediately, the cabin filled with soft sapphire reflections. Light danced gently across the curved walls, across your hands, across the warm blanket resting over your legs. Nothing flickered harshly. The illumination breathed, slowly brightening, slowly dimming, like the steady rhythm of sleeping lungs. You found yourself matching your breathing to the current without realizing it. In. A gentle glow. Out. The light softened again. The navigator noticed. It happens to everyone. The tiny organisms responded to one another through delicate flashes. No leader directed them. No single creature decided where the current would flow. Each simply followed its nearest neighbors. Over millions of years, that quiet cooperation had become one of the largest living structures on the planet. The current circled the world, crossing oceans, passing beneath forests, threading through the coral cathedrals, connecting every ecosystem beneath the sea. You looked farther ahead. The silver river disappeared into the blue distance. Its journey continued far beyond the horizon. The navigator quietly activated a transparent display. A map appeared beside the observation window. The glowing current wrapped around the entire planet like delicate threads embroidered upon blue silk. It carries more than light. The display shifted. Tiny particles drifted alongside the luminous organisms. Minerals. Microscopic nutrients. Life itself traveled with the current. The forests depended upon it. The coral depended upon it. The bubble cities flourished because of it. Even the gentle giants planned their ancient migrations around its patient flow. It was not merely a river. It was the planet's circulatory system. The heartbeat of an oceanic world. The Serenity allowed itself to drift freely. For the first time since arriving, the ship surrendered completely to the current. No engines corrected its course. No navigation thrusters adjusted its direction. The ocean itself became your guide. You smiled. There was unexpected comfort in letting go. The current already knew where it wished to travel. Hours slipped by unnoticed. The surrounding water slowly changed color. Silver became pale turquoise. Then soft emerald. The organisms adjusted their glow in response to subtle changes in chemistry. Each region possessed its own gentle color. Like seasons quietly flowing through water instead of forests. The navigator poured warm tea into 2 small cups. Steam curled lazily upward. It seemed almost impossible that inside the ship, tea remained warm. While beyond the glass stretched an alien ocean older than most stars visible from Earth. Neither reality diminished the other. Together, they created a feeling of perfect balance. The navigator spoke softly. Humanity often imagines progress as moving faster. They watched the glowing current. This planet chose another path. You waited. It became wiser by flowing more gently. Outside, small translucent creatures drifted alongside the current. Their delicate bodies resembled floating leaves. Whenever one entered the glowing river, its entire body illuminated from within. For several peaceful seconds, it became a tiny moving lantern. Then the light slowly faded as it continued its journey. Nothing here seemed separate. Everything borrowed. Everything shared. Everything returned. The current widened. Ahead, the river divided into dozens of smaller streams. Each curved gracefully through towering coral formations. From above, they resembled glowing streets spreading through an invisible city. The navigator smiled. They're choosing different destinations. You watched the branching rivers. None competed. None rushed. Each simply followed the landscape that welcomed it. You wondered how many lessons an ocean could quietly teach. The ship continued drifting. Far in the distance, a familiar sound reached you. Low. Gentle. The songs of the gentle giants. The voices arrived through the current itself. Carried across unimaginable distances. The glowing river did more than nourish life. It carried music. The navigator closed their eyes. The entire ocean listens together. You listen too. The giants were impossibly far away. Yet their songs remained warm. Present. as though distance meant very little to water. Perhaps kindness worked the same way. Small acts, shared patiently, traveling farther than anyone expected. The current gradually slowed. The glowing organisms began gathering around enormous reef formations ahead. Some settled gently upon sleeping coral. Others disappeared into hidden caves beneath the ocean floor. Night, if such a word still applied beneath the sea, had begun. The navigator pointed toward the darkness ahead. There. At first, you saw nothing. Then, the outline of an immense reef slowly emerged. Unlike the vibrant coral cathedrals, this place appeared almost completely still. No glowing flowers. No drifting lanterns. No moving schools of fish. Only quiet shapes resting beneath the current. The navigator lowered their voice until it became almost a whisper. The sleeping reef. The words settled softly into the cabin. Tomorrow, you would discover why an entire ecosystem chose one peaceful season every year to become almost perfectly silent. Behind you, the luminous current continued its endless journey around the world, patiently carrying light, life, and the songs of the ocean, one gentle pulse at a time. The luminous current continued its endless journey. Its soft glow slowly faded behind the Serenity, leaving only scattered ribbons of pale blue drifting through the immense darkness. Ahead, the ocean grew quieter than it had ever been. Even the distant songs of the gentle giants had disappeared. The ship reduced its speed until it was almost impossible to tell whether it was moving at all. The navigator stood silently beside the observation window. After several peaceful minutes, they spoke. This is one of the quietest places on the planet. You looked through the glass. At first, there seemed to be nothing. Only dark water stretching endlessly in every direction. Then, your eyes slowly adjusted. Shapes began to emerge. Towering coral formations. Gentle hills. Broad arches. Entire valleys hidden beneath the sea. Unlike the vibrant cathedrals, everything here remained still. Perfectly still. No schools of fish. No drifting gardens. No glowing flowers. Even the water itself seemed reluctant to move. The navigator whispered. The sleeping reef. The name carried no mystery. Only peace. The Serenity floated gently over the first coral ridge. The structures here were older than any you had seen before. Their graceful curves had been shaped over millions of years. Smooth. Patient. Untouched by haste. Many were enormous. Some stretched for kilometers across the ocean floor. Others rose like quiet mountains toward the distant surface. Yet none displayed the brilliant colors of younger reefs. Their beauty came from simplicity. Soft ivory. Gentle silver. Pale blue. Almost as though time itself had slowly polished every surface. You noticed something remarkable. The coral polyps were closed. Every one of them. Millions upon millions of tiny living creatures. Resting together. The navigator smiled. They sleep. You turn toward them. All at once? A gentle nod. Once every orbital cycle. For nearly 3 Earth months, the entire reef entered a state of profound rest. Growth slowed almost to nothing. Movement became nearly invisible. Even the smallest creatures synchronized their lives with this ancient rhythm. The ocean never hurried them awake. It simply waited. The Serenity drifted lower. The observation lights remained off. There was no need for artificial illumination. Tiny traces of the luminous current still passed through the valleys. Their faint glow gently outlined the peaceful landscape. You found yourself breathing more slowly. The reef seemed to invite it. Not through words. Through example. The navigator spoke quietly. On Earth, they said, people often celebrate constant activity. You listened. This reef celebrates stillness. The sentence lingered. Outside, a single translucent shell rested upon a smooth coral ledge. Its delicate surface reflected the soft blue light. Nothing moved. Then, ever so slowly, the shell opened. Not fully. Only enough to reveal a tiny silver pearl glowing inside. For several seconds, the pearl shimmered. Then the shell gently closed again. The navigator smiled. Even while sleeping, they whispered, life continues becoming beautiful. You watched the quiet reef. Perhaps rest was never the opposite of growth. Perhaps it was simply another way of growing. The Serenity followed a narrow canyon winding through the coral. The walls rose gracefully on either side, smooth as carved marble. Tiny streams of luminous microorganisms drifted lazily overhead like stars crossing a midnight sky. No currents disturbed the canyon floor. Ancient white sand rested undisturbed beneath the ship. The navigator pointed ahead. There, a vast circular basin slowly appeared. It was unlike anything you had seen. Thousands of coral branches curved inward from every direction. Together they formed a great bowl nearly 5 kilometers across. Within it, nothing grew. No coral. No plants. No luminous creatures. Only calm water. The navigator lowered their voice almost to silence. This place has remained untouched for over 1,000,000 years. You looked carefully. The basin appeared empty. Yet it felt important. Sacred, perhaps. Not because anything extraordinary happened there. Because nothing did. The ocean had preserved one place where life simply rested. Completely. The Serenity entered the basin. The water became astonishingly still. No ripples touched the hull. No particles drifted past the windows. Even the gentle hum of the ship seemed softer. You closed your eyes. For a brief moment, it became impossible to tell where your breathing ended and where the ocean began. The navigator remained silent. There was nothing to explain. Some places teach without speaking. Minutes passed. Or perhaps hours. Time no longer seemed interested in measuring itself. Eventually, A tiny movement caught your attention. At the center of the basin, a single coral flower slowly opened. Its pale white petals unfolded one by one. No larger than your hand. No brighter than moonlight. It remained open for only a few moments. Then gently closed again. The navigator smiled warmly. The reef is dreaming. You looked toward them. Dreaming? The scientists don't call it that. A quiet laugh. They say the reef exchanges chemical signals while it rests. You smiled. But the navigator looked back toward the sleeping flower. Sometimes poetry notices truth before science finds the right words. The sentence settled gently into your thoughts. Perhaps the reef did dream. Not in images. Not in stories. But in quiet conversations carried slowly from one tiny organism to another. Planning tomorrow's growth. Remembering yesterday's light. Sharing life through silence. The Serenity slowly left the great basin. Behind you, the white coral flower disappeared once more into peaceful stillness. Ahead, the reef gradually awakened. Not because morning had arrived. Because the luminous current flowed nearby once again. Tiny blue lights drifted across the coral ridges. One by one, small creatures began stirring. Not fully awake. Simply preparing. Life returned gently. Without alarm. Without urgency. The navigator looked toward the deep ocean beyond the reef. The sea grows deeper from here. Far ahead. The water darkened into shades almost beyond blue. A vast abyss stretched toward the heart of the planet. From somewhere within that ancient darkness, a single low tone slowly emerged. Long. Gentle. Almost impossible to hear. It did not come from the gentle giants. Nor from the current. Nor from the reef. It came from the ocean itself. The navigator listened quietly. Then smiled. Tomorrow, they whispered, we will descend into the singing abyss. Behind you, the sleeping reef continued its timeless rest, patiently reminding every traveler that even the oldest living worlds understand something humanity often forgets. Sometimes, the most important thing life can do is simply pause. The sleeping reef slowly disappeared into the blue distance. Its pale coral ridges faded beneath the soft glow of the luminous current until they became part of memory. Ahead, the ocean deepened. Not only in color, in feeling. The water outside the observation window gradually changed from sapphire to indigo, to a blue so profound it seemed almost black. Yet it was not darkness. It was depth. The Serenity continued descending. Patiently. Silently. The ship's lights remained dim. The navigator believed that some places should reveal themselves naturally, without interruption. You watched the last faint traces of sunlight disappear far above. The surface of the ocean became a distant silver circle. Then, it vanished completely. For the first time, you were surrounded by the true heart of an alien sea. Still, You could see. Tiny organisms floated through the abyss. Each emitted only the gentlest glow. Together, they transformed the darkness into something unexpectedly warm. Not bright enough to erase mystery. Only enough to remind every traveler that they were never truly alone. The navigator spoke softly. Many people fear deep oceans. You nodded. Because they cannot see what is below. The navigator smiled. This ocean teaches another lesson. They looked toward the endless blue. Sometimes, you don't need to see everything. You only need enough light for the next peaceful step. The words drifted through the cabin like calm water. The Serenity descended farther. The pressure outside the hull had become immense. Enough to crush any ordinary vessel. Yet the ship floated effortlessly. Its structure had been designed not to resist the ocean, but to yield gently with it. The navigator often said that survival begins with understanding, not force. Hours passed. Or perhaps only moments. Time flowed strangely in the abyss. Eventually, the water around the ship began to shimmer. Not with scattered lights. With sound. At first, you thought it was another illusion. Then you realized what you were seeing. Low-frequency vibrations moved through the water in graceful waves. Each vibration gently disturbed billions of microscopic luminous organisms. As the sound traveled, the tiny creatures brightened for an instant. The music became visible. Great rings of soft blue light expanded through the abyss. Each pulse drifted slowly past the observation window. Silent to your ears. Beautiful to your eyes. You whispered. What is making them? The navigator smiled. The ocean. No further explanation seemed necessary. The ship continued following the glowing rings. They appeared every few moments. Always gentle. Always perfectly spaced. Never hurried. Never chaotic. Like the breathing of something impossibly ancient. The navigator activated a transparent display. It translated the low-frequency vibrations into sounds the human ear could hear. A single note filled the cabin. Deep. Warm. Almost impossibly slow. It lingered for many seconds before fading into silence. Then another arrived. Slightly higher. Then another. The abyss was singing. Not through voices. Not through creatures. Through the movement of the planet itself. Far below the ocean floor. Gentle geothermal currents warmed hidden chambers. As water slowly rose and cooled, vast underwater caverns became natural resonators. The planet had been composing its own music for billions of years. Long before any living thing learned to listen. You closed your eyes. The notes seemed to pass through your body rather than around it. Your heartbeat gradually settled into the same peaceful rhythm. Your breathing slowed. Even your thoughts seemed to become quieter. The navigator noticed. This place has guided meditation for civilizations that never met one another. They smiled softly. Different worlds. The same silence. The Serenity drifted deeper. Enormous stone arches slowly emerged from the darkness. Not coral this time. Ancient volcanic formations shaped by water across unimaginable ages. Some resembled great cathedral ceilings. Others formed winding tunnels stretching beyond sight. Every few moments, another deep note echoed through the stone. Each arch answered with its own unique resonance. Together, they created a natural symphony. No composer, no conductor, only physics, becoming music. Tiny luminous creatures gathered around the vibrating stone. Each pulse awakened another wave of glowing blue light. The entire abyss breathed with every note. The navigator rested one hand upon the window. On Earth, people build concert halls. They looked toward the living darkness. This world simply waited. You smiled. Patience again. Everything beautiful here seemed born from time, rather than effort. Ahead, a colossal opening appeared. Its entrance stretched nearly a kilometer across. The edges were smooth as polished obsidian. Within, only darkness. The navigator slowed the ship. This is the echo chamber. The Serenity entered quietly. Immediately, the sound changed. Every note lingered much longer. One deep tone would gently overlap the next. Then another. The chamber never became loud. Only full. Like countless layers of calm resting peacefully together. You noticed tiny droplets suspended in the water. Perfectly round. Perfectly still. Each reflected faint blue light from every direction. The navigator smiled. Mineral spheres. Over millions of years, the gentle vibrations had shaped microscopic crystals into floating pearls. Billions of them drifted silently throughout the chamber. As the music passed through, the pearls shimmered together. The entire cave became a sky filled with slow-moving stars. You could no longer tell whether you floated beneath an ocean or among galaxies. Perhaps there had never been much difference. The navigator spoke almost in a whisper. The universe enjoys repeating itself. Stars above, pearls below, galaxies beyond, coral forests beneath. Different scales, the same quiet patterns. The Serenity remained within the echo chamber for a long while. Neither of you spoke. There seemed nothing left to explain, only to experience. Eventually, the deep notes became softer. The glowing rings spread farther apart. The ocean floor beneath the ship began rising once again. The abyss was ending. As the ship gently climbed, one final note echoed behind you. Long. Peaceful. It lingered so gently that you almost believed the ocean itself wished you a safe journey. Far ahead, a faint silver glow appeared once more. Not the luminous current. Something larger. Something rising toward the surface. The navigator smiled. Tomorrow, they whispered, we will witness the place where this world's oceans are born each day. You looked toward the distant light. It shimmered softly through the blue water. Like dawn. waiting beneath the sea. Behind you, the singing abyss continued its endless hymn. A song with no beginning, no ending. Only gentle echoes, carried patiently through an ocean that had been listening to itself for 6 billion years. The final echoes of the singing abyss slowly dissolved into silence. For a long while, the only sound inside the Serenity was the quiet whisper of its life support systems. Outside, the ocean gradually brightened. The deep indigo water softened into luminous shades of cobalt, then sapphire, then pale blue. The ship was ascending, not toward the surface, toward something else, a distant radiance. The navigator watched the glow growing brighter ahead. There are rivers that flow across the surface. A gentle pause. And there are rivers that flow beneath it. You remembered the luminous current, the floating forest, the bubble cities. Everything on this remarkable world seemed connected. The navigator smiled. Now you will see where every current begins. The Serenity continued forward. The water surrounding the ship became unexpectedly warm. Tiny streams of shimmering bubbles drifted upward. Not air. Minerals. Each crystal caught the light like a tiny floating diamond. The entire ocean sparkled. Far ahead, the source of the glow slowly revealed itself. At first, it resembled a mountain rising from the seabed. Then, its true shape emerged. A great circular formation nearly 50 kilometers wide. Its gentle slopes curved inward toward a vast opening at the center, like an enormous flower blooming beneath the sea. The navigator whispered, "The wellspring." The name felt ancient, as though no other name had ever existed. The Serenity slowed almost to a stop. You looked into the center of the formation. There, a column of warm water rose slowly from deep within the planet. It did not erupt. It did not roar. It simply ascended. Patiently. Gracefully. The water shimmered with faint silver light, carrying minerals from the planet's interior, nourishing the entire ocean above. The navigator activated a transparent map. Gentle arrows spread outward from the wellspring. The rising water divided into countless invisible currents. Some traveled toward the coral cathedrals. Others fed the floating forest. Many eventually joined the luminous current. Every ecosystem you had visited began here. Not suddenly. Not dramatically. Quietly. Like kindness spreading through generations. The Serenity drifted into the outer edge of the rising current. The ship barely moved. The water itself carried it upward. You smiled. For once, even gravity seemed patient. As the vessel rose, the surrounding water filled with extraordinary life. Tiny translucent organisms floated within the warm stream. Many had never been seen anywhere else on the planet. Some resembled delicate glass flowers. Others looked like drifting feathers made entirely of light. None hurried. The rising water gave them everything they needed. The navigator spoke softly. Every beginning here, they said, starts with generosity. The sentence lingered in the quiet cabin. The wellspring asked for nothing. It simply gave. Hour after hour. Century after century. Million after million of years. The ocean answered by becoming alive. The Serenity entered the heart of the ascending column. Outside the observation window, countless tiny crystals caught the sunlight filtering faintly from above. The entire current transformed into a spiral galaxy of silver stars. You almost forgot you were underwater. It felt as though the ship floated inside the Milky Way itself. The navigator smiled knowingly. You've noticed the resemblance. You nodded. The universe repeats its favorite designs. Galaxies. Hurricanes. Flowers. Coral. Currents. Spiral after spiral. Different scales. The same quiet mathematics. The ship continued rising without effort. The warm current gently embraced the hull. No engines. No resistance. Only trust. You found yourself wondering how often life becomes easier when we stop pushing against every current. Halfway through the ascent, something immense appeared beside the ship. It was neither animal nor plant. A colossal ribbon of living crystal floated within the current. Its transparent body stretched for several kilometers. Soft bands of turquoise light pulsed slowly from one end to the other. It moved with the water rather than through it. The navigator's eyes brightened. The current keepers. The enormous creature glided peacefully alongside the Serenity. Wherever its body passed, the rising water became clearer. Mineral particles arranged themselves into delicate spirals. Tiny organisms gathered behind it. Not because it commanded them, because its gentle movement naturally organized the flow around it. You watched in quiet amazement. Even this giant creature served the ocean simply by existing. It never hunted, never defended territory, never competed. Its life was harmony. The navigator whispered, sometimes the greatest purpose, they smiled, is simply helping others flow. The current keeper slowly turned. For one brief moment, its translucent body reflected both the ship and the distant sunlight filtering through the sea. Then it disappeared into the shimmering column, leaving only gentle ripples of silver light behind. Hours passed unnoticed. The higher you rose, the brighter the ocean became. Sunbeams pierced the water above like vast golden pillars. The wellspring slowly widened beneath you. Its countless branches carried life toward every horizon. Looking downward, you realized something beautiful. The entire planet was connected. Every forest, every coral tower, every bubble city, every gentle giant, every luminous current, every quiet song, all were nourished by one patient source hidden deep below. The navigator rested their hand lightly against the glass. Most travelers search for extraordinary destinations. They looked back toward the glowing wellspring. This planet reminds us to honor quiet beginnings. You nodded. No forest grows without hidden roots. No song begins without a single note. No ocean thrives without a source no one sees. The Serenity finally emerged from the upper edge of the current. The sea around you sparkled beneath the afternoon light. Far above, the silver mirror of the surface shimmered gently. It was closer now than it had been in many days. The navigator looked toward the western horizon. There is one final place this ocean wishes to share. You followed their gaze. Far in the distance, a curtain of pale blue mist stretched from the sea toward the sky. At first, it resembled ordinary clouds. Then, you noticed something impossible. The mist was flowing upward. Not falling. Rising. Like an invisible waterfall climbing toward the heavens. The navigator smiled softly. Tomorrow, they whispered, you will witness the sky tide. Behind you, the wellspring continued its endless gift, patiently sending life upward through the heart of an ocean that had quietly learned long ago. The greatest miracles rarely announce themselves. They simply continue, one gentle current at a time. Morning arrived wrapped in silver mist. The surface of the ocean was almost perfectly still. Only gentle swells lifted the Serenity as though the planet itself were breathing beneath the hull. Far behind, the hidden wellspring continued nourishing the world below. Ahead, the pale curtain you had glimpsed the day before stretched across the horizon. It seemed impossible. Water was rising into the sky, not falling back toward the sea. The navigator poured 2 cups of warm tea before speaking. Every ocean eventually returns to the heavens. You nodded. On Earth, they continued. We call it evaporation. A quiet smile. But every world tells the same story in its own language. The Serenity glided toward the shimmering veil. The air outside grew warmer. Gentle currents flowed upward instead of across the surface. Tiny droplets floated around the ship like suspended crystals. None fell. Each one drifted patiently toward the sky. As the distance closed, the phenomenon revealed its true scale. The curtain was not a single wall of mist. It stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Countless invisible columns of warm, moisture-rich air rose slowly from the endless sea. Within them, billions of microscopic droplets caught the morning sunlight. Together, they formed a luminous river climbing into the heavens. The navigator whispered, "The sky tide." The name felt wonderfully fitting. The ocean possessed its own tides, not only beneath the pull of distant moons, but upward, toward the clouds, toward tomorrow's rain, toward another beginning. The Serenity entered the rising mist. Immediately, the world softened. The horizon disappeared. The sea faded into gentle shades of pearl and pale blue. Sunlight scattered through countless floating droplets. Rainbows appeared everywhere. Tiny arcs of color shimmered beside the observation windows. Others drifted slowly through the mist before quietly dissolving. You reached toward the glass. The droplets outside reflected the stars. The ocean, And the ship itself. Each tiny sphere held a complete world. The navigator noticed. A single drop remembers the whole sky. The sentence lingered warmly. The ship continued climbing through the rising current. No engine strained. The warm air itself gently lifted the vessel. Below, the ocean slowly became visible again through gaps in the mist. It looked impossibly calm. A living sapphire stretching beyond every horizon. Far above, soft white clouds drifted patiently across the heavens. You suddenly understood. The clouds were not separate from the sea. They were simply the sea, continuing another part of its journey. The navigator activated a transparent display. A delicate illustration appeared. Warm water rising, cooling, becoming clouds, returning later as gentle rain. Every drop completing the same endless circle. The universe dislikes endings, they said softly. It prefers cycles. You smiled. Nothing truly vanished. Not oceans. Not stars. Perhaps not even memories. Everything simply transformed. The Serenity reached the highest part of the sky tide. The rising mist became thinner. Sunlight poured freely through the clouds. The view stole your breath. Below, the ocean reflected the sky so perfectly that it became impossible to tell where one ended and the other began. Above, vast fields of white clouds drifted peacefully. Below, their twins floated upon the sea. The ship appeared suspended exactly between two heavens. The navigator remained silent. There was nothing left to explain. Only beauty. Only stillness. Only gratitude. Small winged creatures suddenly appeared among the clouds. Their translucent bodies shimmered with soft silver light. They rode the warm air effortlessly, never flapping their graceful wings, only gliding. They circled the ship once, then disappeared back into the glowing mist. They spend their entire lives, the navigator whispered, between ocean and sky, neither belonging completely to one nor the other. Perhaps some lives are meant to become bridges. The ship drifted slowly onward. Tiny droplets continued gathering upon the observation window. Each reflected sunlight before quietly sliding away. You found unexpected comfort watching them. Every drop released the glass without resistance. Trusting gravity. Trusting the wind. Trusting the journey. Hours passed almost unnoticed. The sky tide gradually weakened. The warm columns of rising air became gentler. The mist slowly dissolved. Ahead, the open sky stretched clear and endless once more. The ocean below shimmered beneath the afternoon sun. It looked exactly as it had before. Yet you knew it differently now. You understood that every cloud overhead had once rested peacefully within those waters. Every future rainstorm already existed somewhere inside the sea. The navigator looked toward the western horizon. Evening was approaching. Golden light spread softly across the waves. Far in the distance, the surface of the ocean began glowing. Not with reflected sunlight, with countless tiny lights awakening beneath the water. You smiled. Night was returning. The great bioluminescent ocean was preparing its evening constellation. The navigator smiled back. There is one last night before we leave this world. A quiet pause. Tonight, they whispered, the ocean will show us its farewell. The Serenity continued drifting beneath the widening sky. Behind you, the sky tide continued carrying the sea upward toward the clouds. Patiently, endlessly, one invisible drop at a time. You realized something gentle. Nothing on this planet tried to hold on forever. Water became cloud. Cloud became rain. Rain became ocean. The current became song. The song became silence. And silence always found its way back to peace. Evening arrived so gently that you hardly noticed the day slipping away. The golden light upon the ocean slowly softened into amber. Amber became violet. Violet dissolved into deep blue. The first stars appeared overhead. One. Then another. Then hundreds. The sea remained perfectly calm. Its surface reflected the heavens with such astonishing clarity that the sky seemed to continue beneath the ship. For a while, there were two universes. One above, one below. The Serenity drifted without a destination. No engines disturbed the water. No instruments interrupted the quiet. The navigator dimmed every light inside the cabin until only the stars illuminated your surroundings. This world saves its quietest miracle. They whispered. For the last night. You looked across the endless ocean. Nothing moved. Then, a single point of blue light appeared beneath the surface. Soft, gentle. It glowed for only a few seconds before fading again. Another answered farther away. Then another. Within moments, hundreds of tiny lights awakened across the sea. You smiled. The bioluminescent organisms had returned. But tonight, they behaved differently. Instead of glowing at random, they pulsed together. Slowly, rhythmically. The entire ocean seemed to breathe with light. The navigator watched silently. Then they spoke. They're listening to the moon. High above, the planet's single moon rose quietly over the eastern horizon. Larger than Earth's moon. Its pale silver light spread across the water like flowing silk. As it climbed higher, the glowing organisms responded. Millions of tiny lights brightened together. Then softened. Again. And again. The ocean itself had become a heartbeat. The Serenity floated directly above the luminous sea. The water beneath the hull shimmered with endless constellations. You could no longer tell where the stars ended and where the ocean began. The navigator smiled gently. For countless generations, they whispered. Travelers believed the sky taught the ocean how to shine. A pause. Later they discovered the opposite was equally true. You watched a shooting star cross the heavens. At that exact moment, A long ribbon of blue light flowed through the sea beneath it. The reflection appeared so perfect that the meteor seemed to pass through both worlds simultaneously. Sky. Water. One graceful motion. The air outside remained wonderfully still. Not even the smallest breeze disturbed the surface. Every glowing organism became visible, each no larger than a tiny grain of dust. Yet together, they transformed an entire planet. You remembered the luminous current, the bubble cities, the sleeping reef. Again and again, this world revealed the same quiet lesson. Small things, working together, create wonders beyond imagination. The navigator poured warm tea. Neither of you hurried to drink it. The rising steam drifted lazily toward the ceiling. Outside, the moon climbed higher. The glowing sea grew brighter. Suddenly, a long silver shape emerged beneath the water. Then another. Then dozens. The gentle giants had returned. Not singing this time. Swimming. Their immense bodies glided silently through the luminous ocean. Wherever they passed, millions of tiny organisms illuminated around them. Each giant carried an enormous halo of blue light. They resembled living constellations moving beneath the waves. One passed directly beneath the Serenity. Its broad back shimmered like polished sapphire. Tiny forests still flourished upon its skin. Small creatures rested peacefully among the gentle gardens. The giant never surfaced. It simply continued its timeless migration. The navigator watched with quiet admiration. They always travel beneath the stars. You looked upward. So they can see them? The navigator smiled. Perhaps. A thoughtful silence. Or perhaps the stars enjoy watching them. For several long minutes, nothing happened. Nothing except beauty. The giants continued swimming. The moon continued rising. The ocean continued breathing. Sometimes, peace needs no story. Only presence. Far on the western horizon, another remarkable sight slowly appeared. The Milky Way stretched across the heavens in a broad river of white light. At exactly the same moment, the bioluminescent organisms beneath the sea gathered into an almost identical shape. A glowing band slowly formed across the water. Galaxy above. Galaxy below. The two mirrored one another with astonishing precision. The navigator lowered their voice almost to silence. The universe likes reflections. You remembered the rivers of starlight, the singing abyss, the wellspring. Every stage of the journey had quietly echoed another. Nothing existed alone. Everything belonged to a greater pattern. You rested comfortably beneath the blanket. Your breathing had become wonderfully slow. The boundary between waking and dreaming seemed softer now. The ship, the ocean, the stars, they all moved together. Not separately. The navigator looked toward the distant horizon. Tomorrow, they whispered, we begin the journey home. The words carried no sadness. Only gratitude. The ocean had shared everything it wished to teach. Now, it simply allowed you to remember. The gentle giants gradually disappeared into deeper water. Their glowing outlines faded gently into the darkness. The bioluminescent sea continued shining beneath the moon. Patiently. Endlessly. The stars above wheeled silently across the heavens. The stars below answered every movement with light. Between them, the Serenity drifted like a quiet thought carried across eternity. You realized something as sleep slowly approached. Perhaps the greatest journey is never about reaching another world. Perhaps it is returning home, able to see your own world with gentler eyes. The moon climbed higher. The ocean continued glowing. And somewhere beyond the peaceful horizon, dawn was already preparing to welcome your final morning upon the blue world. The first light of dawn arrived quietly. There was no dramatic sunrise. Only a gentle silver glow spreading across the eastern horizon. The stars slowly faded, one by one, until only the brightest remained. Beneath them, the bioluminescent ocean gradually dimmed. Millions of tiny lights rested together as morning returned. The sea had completed another peaceful night. The Serenity floated motionless upon calm water. For a long while, neither you nor the navigator spoke. There seemed nothing left to say. Some places ask only for gratitude before goodbye. The morning breeze carried the clean scent of salt across the observation deck. Tiny waves lapped softly against the invisible energy field surrounding the ship. Each ripple caught the growing sunlight before disappearing once more into sapphire blue. The navigator finally broke the silence. Every journey leaves something behind. You looked across the endless ocean. And take something with it. The words settled gently. You wondered which part of yourself would remain here forever. Perhaps your hurried thoughts. Perhaps your restless worries. Perhaps the invisible weight you had carried from Earth without realizing it. The ship slowly rose from the surface. Not quickly. Almost reluctantly. The ocean beneath reflected the vessel until it became only a small silver point between two skies. Higher. The floating forest appeared once more. Its emerald canopies drifted gracefully with the ancient currents. From this distance, they resembled delicate green brushstrokes upon an endless blue canvas. Beyond them, the coral cathedrals stretched across the sea like quiet mountain ranges grown from living stone. Farther still, the paths of the gentle giants became visible as enormous circles spreading gently across the water. You smiled. Now that you knew where to look. The entire planet revealed its quiet rhythm. Nothing had changed. Only your eyes. The navigator noticed. That's how wisdom usually works. They smiled softly. The world stays the same. We simply begin seeing more of it. The Serenity continued climbing. The atmosphere grew thinner. Clouds drifted beneath the ship. The sky tide shimmered in the distance, lifting invisible rivers toward the heavens. From above, the entire water cycle became visible. Mist rising. Clouds forming. Rain returning far beyond the horizon. An endless conversation between ocean and sky. The navigator activated the panoramic display. The blue world slowly filled the window. Without continents. Without borders. Without cities. It appeared astonishingly peaceful. A single living ocean embracing an entire planet. The Serenity entered low orbit. The planet rotated slowly beneath you. Day crossed into night. Night returned to day. On the dark side, the familiar glow of bioluminescence awakened once more. Soft blue rivers drifted across the sea. The bubble cities sparkled beneath the surface like hidden constellations. Even from orbit, the gentle giants left faint trails of luminous currents behind their ancient migrations. The planet breathed. Quietly. Patiently. The navigator rested both hands behind their back. There are worlds richer than this one. They paused. Worlds larger. Older. Far stranger. You looked toward them. But the navigator smiled. Very few are kinder. The sentence lingered. Kindness. That was the true memory you would carry home. Not extraordinary creatures. Not impossible oceans. But a civilization. An ecosystem. An entire planet. That had discovered harmony without needing conquest. The Serenity gently rotated. The blue world slowly drifted toward the rear observation window. Its brilliant sapphire oceans reflected the distant sun one final time. You stood quietly. Not waving. The planet required no farewell ceremony. Some friendships continue even after distance grows. The navigator spoke almost in a whisper. Thank you. At first, you thought they were speaking to you. Then you realized they were thanking the planet itself. You found yourself doing the same. Without words. Only gratitude. The ion engines awakened. Their familiar, gentle hum filled the cabin once more. No sudden acceleration. Only a slow, steady push toward the stars. The blue world gradually became smaller. Its atmosphere shrank into a delicate halo of light. Its oceans merged into one shimmering sapphire pearl. Then, it became another star among countless others. Yet you knew exactly which one it was. The navigator adjusted the course. Ahead. The familiar stars of Orion slowly emerged once more. Different now. Not because Orion had changed. Because you had traveled beyond it. And returned. The constellation no longer felt like a destination. It felt like an old friend waiting quietly along the road home. You rested beneath the warm blanket. The cabin lights glowed softly. The steady rhythm of the engines blended with your breathing. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Behind you, an ocean world continued its timeless song. Ahead, the long journey through interstellar silence awaited. The navigator looked toward the endless darkness. Our return will not be the same path. You smiled gently. No journey ever is. The navigator nodded. Exactly. Far ahead. A faint ribbon of silver light slowly appeared between the stars. Not a river. Not a current. A cloud. A vast interstellar nebula glowing quietly in the darkness. The navigator's eyes reflected its distant light. Tomorrow. They whispered. We will sail through the whispering nebula. Behind you. The blue world became almost invisible. Yet its quiet lessons remained. Like gentle waves continuing long after the shore has disappeared. Several days passed in peaceful silence. The blue world had long disappeared behind the Serenity. Not completely. Its light still traveled through space. If someone stood on a distant planet many years from now, they would still see its gentle sapphire glow exactly as you had. The navigator smiled when you mentioned this. Light never hurries. It simply keeps its promise. Outside the observation window, the stars slowly changed. The familiar constellations of Earth's sky quietly dissolved. Orion stretched apart once more. Its bright stars no longer formed the ancient hunter. Instead, they became individual suns, each following its own patient path through the galaxy. Ahead, a pale veil floated across the darkness. It was neither cloud nor fog. It shimmered softly in shades of silver, lavender, and faint blue. The farther the Serenity traveled, the larger it became. The navigator dimmed the cabin lights. We are approaching the Whispering Nebula. The name suited it perfectly. Even from a great distance, the nebula seemed impossibly gentle. Unlike the brilliant clouds often shown in astronomy books, this one glowed only faintly, almost shyly. Its beauty asked you to come closer, not to admire it from afar. The Serenity entered the outer edge of the cloud. Nothing struck the hull. Nothing shook. Only tiny particles of interstellar dust drifted quietly around the ship. Each grain was smaller than smoke. Yet together, they painted an entire region of space with soft color. The observation window gradually adjusted its sensitivity. At first, the cloud appeared almost transparent. Then, hidden rivers of light slowly emerged. Silver filaments stretched through the nebula like delicate threads woven by invisible hands. Some curved gracefully for millions of kilometers. Others twisted gently around one another. Never touching. Always dancing. The navigator spoke softly. These are magnetic rivers. You watched the glowing threads. The dust itself was not creating the light. Tiny charged particles drifting through invisible magnetic fields were gently illuminating the cloud. The universe possessed rivers even where no water could exist. You smiled. The blue world had taught you that oceans connect life. Now, space itself revealed another quiet network. Different, yet somehow familiar. The Serenity reduced its speed. Beauty deserved patience. Inside the nebula, the stars became softer. Many disappeared completely behind thin curtains of cosmic dust. Others glowed like lanterns seen through morning mist. The entire galaxy seemed to whisper instead of shine. The navigator rested a hand against the observation window. Long ago, they whispered. People believed empty space was silent. A quiet pause. We simply hadn't learned how to listen. Tiny particles gently brushed against the ship's magnetic shield. Each impact was far too small to feel. Yet together, they created faint electrical vibrations. The Serenity translated them into soft sounds inside the cabin. Not music. Not exactly. Something gentler. Like distant wind moving through tall grass. Like rain falling far away. Like leaves breathing beneath moonlight. The nebula had found its own voice. Neither you nor the navigator spoke. The quiet sounds filled every corner of the cabin. No melody repeated. No rhythm demanded attention. The whispers simply existed. Patiently. The ship drifted deeper. The silver rivers became brighter. Occasionally, small knots of glowing gas appeared within the cloud. Tiny stellar nurseries. Places where gravity slowly gathered dust together. Perhaps, millions of years from now, new stars would awaken there. The navigator smiled. This is where tomorrow's sunlight is sleeping. You looked toward the glowing clouds. It felt impossible. Yet every star, including your own sun, had once begun inside a place much like this. The nebula was not merely beautiful. It was hopeful. A reminder that beginnings often hide inside quiet places. Far ahead, a brilliant point of golden light slowly emerged through the mist. Not a mature star. A protostar. Still gathering material. Still growing. Its light pulsed gently as surrounding gas spiraled inward. The observation window magnified the scene. You watched vast ribbons of dust slowly turning around the newborn sun. Nothing happened quickly. Entire centuries would pass before noticeable change occurred. The universe seemed wonderfully untroubled by time. The navigator poured another cup of warm tea. Steam curled lazily upward. Outside, a star was being born. Inside, tea slowly cooled. Neither process needed rushing. The Serenity glided past the young star. Its gentle warmth reached the hull after crossing millions of kilometers. Even here, life's future quietly announced itself. The navigator looked toward the fading blue world behind you. Then toward the newborn star ahead. One journey ends. A thoughtful pause. Another quietly begins. You realized something. Every place you had visited. The rivers of starlight. The floating forest. The bubble cities. The singing abyss. The sky tide. Had shared one lesson. Nothing truly stood alone. Everything belonged to a cycle larger than itself. Stars became dust. Dust became stars. Oceans became clouds. Clouds became rain. Travelers became memories. Memories became wisdom. The Serenity slowly approached the far edge of the nebula. The silver mist began thinning. One by one, the stars returned. Brighter now. Sharper. The galaxy opened once again into infinite darkness. Behind you, The whispering nebula remained. A soft veil wrapped around sleeping suns. Ahead. Something extraordinary caught your eye. Far beyond the last wisps of cosmic dust, a brilliant river stretched across the heavens. Not made of gas. Not made of stars alone. A dense stream of ancient globular clusters, flowing like a celestial waterfall around the outer reaches of the galaxy. The navigator smiled warmly. The river of ancient suns. Their voice became almost a whisper. Tomorrow, they said, we will meet the oldest light still traveling through our galaxy. You rested quietly beneath the blanket. Outside, the final silver threads of the whispering nebula drifted away behind the Serenity. Like gentle thoughts, slowly dissolving into the endless peace of space. The whispering nebula gradually disappeared behind the Serenity. Its silver mist became little more than a soft memory woven among distant stars. Ahead, space opened once again. Clear, boundless, silent. The galaxy stretched across the heavens like an endless ribbon of light. From this quiet distance, the Milky Way no longer appeared as countless individual stars. It resembled a luminous river flowing gently through eternity. The navigator stood beside the observation window. There are places, they said softly, where time moves so slowly that even stars seem unhurried. You looked ahead. The brilliant stream you had noticed before had grown brighter. It was unlike anything you had seen during the journey. Thousands upon thousands of golden lights clustered together so densely that they resembled a celestial waterfall suspended in darkness. The Serenity adjusted its course with only the slightest movement. No urgency. No dramatic change. Only a quiet decision. The river of ancient suns awaited. As the distance closed, the individual lights slowly separated. Each point became a star. Then another. Then hundreds more. Most glowed with a warm golden hue. Others shimmered softly in pale amber or gentle ivory. Very few burned bright blue. The navigator smiled. Young stars shine with excitement. They looked toward the ancient cluster. Old stars shine with peace. The sentence felt strangely comforting. Perhaps wisdom, like starlight, softens with age. The Serenity entered the outer edge of the great stellar river. Nothing surrounded the ship except light. Stars appeared in every direction. Above, below, ahead, behind. Yet unlike the busy regions near the galactic core, these ancient suns seemed perfectly content with the distances between them. No collisions. No violence. Only patient orbits maintained for billions of years. The observation window quietly magnified one nearby star. It resembled the sun, but older. Its golden surface glowed with remarkable steadiness. The navigator activated a small display. Estimated age, 12.8 billion years. You looked twice. The number hardly seemed possible. This star had begun shining before Earth existed. Before the sun was born. Before most planets in the galaxy had even formed. It had watched nearly the entire history of the Milky Way unfold. Still, it continued shining gently. Without complaint. Without exhaustion. The navigator whispered. Some lights become guides simply because they endure. The Serenity drifted deeper into the cluster. You noticed something remarkable. There were no brilliant explosions. No newborn stars. No glowing nebulae. Everything here carried a quiet maturity. The stars had long ago completed their restless youth. Now, they simply illuminated the darkness for whoever happened to pass by. You found unexpected comfort in that. Not every purpose requires becoming brighter. Sometimes, remaining constant is enough. Hours flowed peacefully by. The cabin remained almost completely silent. Even the ship itself seemed reluctant to disturb the ancient neighborhood. Outside, small worlds circled many of the old stars. Most appeared cold, rocky, patiently orbiting suns that had warmed them for unimaginable ages. The navigator pointed toward one faint orange star. A civilization may once have lived there. You looked carefully. There are no signals now. Only silence remained. Not lonely silence. Peaceful silence. Like an old library after everyone has finished reading. The navigator noticed your thoughtful expression. They're not truly gone. You turn toward them. Their light, a warm smile, is still traveling. Somewhere far beyond the galaxy. Their ancient sunlight continued crossing the universe. Perhaps another traveler would one day see it. Perhaps another dream would begin because of it. Nothing beautiful is ever completely lost. The Serenity continued following the river of ancient suns. Gradually, the stars became even older. Red giants glowed softly among their younger companions. White dwarfs shimmered faintly like tiny pearls hidden in darkness. The life cycles of stars unfolded quietly before your eyes. Birth, growth, gentle aging, transformation. Exactly as the blue world had shone through water. Exactly as the whispering nebula had shone through dust. The universe repeated its favorite lesson once more. Everything changes. Nothing truly disappears. The navigator poured warm tea. Outside, one of the oldest stars in the galaxy continued burning peacefully. Inside, the steam rose slowly toward the cabin ceiling. Tiny moments. Tiny stars. Different scales. The same rhythm. Far ahead, the river began widening. The dense clusters slowly spread apart. Individual stars once again reclaimed the darkness around them. The journey through the ancient lights was nearing its end. Before leaving, the navigator dimmed every remaining display. No maps. No instruments. Only the stars. We always pass through here in silence. They whispered. Out of respect. You nodded. Words suddenly felt unnecessary. Together, you simply watched. The oldest lights in the galaxy continued shining. Exactly as they had for billions of years. exactly as they would long after your own journey had ended. Eventually, the Serenity crossed the final boundary of the river. The ancient stars slowly receded behind you. Ahead, the familiar glow of the solar system's distant neighborhood appeared. Tiny, almost invisible, yet unmistakable. The navigator smiled gently. We're almost home. You looked toward the faint point of golden light. The sun. From this distance, it was only another star among countless others. Yet your heart recognized it immediately. Perhaps home is never the brightest place. Only the place that quietly remembers your name. The navigator rested one hand upon the navigation console. Tomorrow, they whispered. We will cross the final silence between the stars and return to where this journey began. Behind you, the river of ancient suns continued flowing through the galaxy, patiently illuminating eternity, one quiet star at a time. The river of ancient suns slowly faded into the darkness behind the Serenity. Ahead, one small golden star shone with quiet familiarity. The sun. From this distance, it looked no different from countless others scattered across the galaxy. No brighter, no grander, only closer to the memories you carried. The navigator rested beside the observation window. We spend our lives searching for extraordinary places. Their voice was almost a whisper. But eventually, a gentle pause. Every traveler begins searching for home. The Serenity maintained its slow, steady course. No sudden acceleration. No dramatic return. Only a patient crossing through the vast silence between the stars. The cabin lights remained low. Warm amber illumination reflected softly across polished walls. Outside, space appeared emptier than ever before. There were fewer stars here. Greater distances separated them. Yet the silence no longer felt lonely. It felt familiar. Like returning to a room you had once loved. You settled comfortably beneath the blanket. The memories of the journey drifted quietly through your mind. The rivers of starlight. The coral cathedrals. The bubble cities. The gentle giants. The singing abyss. The wellspring. The sky tide. The whispering nebula. The river of ancient suns. None seemed distant. They had become part of you. The navigator noticed your thoughtful expression. Do you know why travelers keep journals? You smiled softly. So they won't forget. The navigator shook their head. They write. Because memory is another way of continuing the journey. The words settled gently into the silence. Outside, the stars slowly shifted as the Serenity crossed invisible currents of gravity flowing through the galaxy. No traveler could see them. Yet every sun, every planet, every comet quietly followed their influence. Even empty space possessed invisible pathways. The navigator activated the panoramic display one final time. A delicate web of faint blue lines appeared among the stars. Gravitational tides. Invisible rivers connecting entire solar systems. You looked carefully. The route home curved gracefully through them. The ship had never traveled randomly. It had listened. Just as the bubble cities listened to light. Just as the ocean listened to the moon. Just as the nebula listened to magnetic fields. Every part of the universe moved through relationships rather than isolation. Nothing journeyed alone. Hours passed without anyone noticing. The sun gradually brightened. Still only a distant point. Yet warmer somehow. Perhaps not because of physics. Because of memory. The navigator quietly prepared another pot of tea. The familiar aroma filled the cabin. It reminded you of the first evening aboard the Serenity. So much had changed. And yet, nothing essential had. The same quiet ship. The same patient guide. The same stars. Only your way of seeing them had transformed. The navigator handed you a warm cup. One last tradition. You accepted it with gratitude. Together. You watched the stars without speaking. Steam rose slowly into the gentle cabin light. Outside. The galaxy turned almost imperceptibly. Somewhere behind you, the blue world continued its endless tides. Somewhere ahead, Earth circled its ordinary yellow star. Both worlds belonged to the same universe, separated by unimaginable distances, connected by the same laws, the same atoms, the same ancient light. The navigator finally broke the silence. Do you remember what I asked you before departure? You closed your eyes. You did. You had been asked to leave your burdens behind. To board the ship with nothing except curiosity. The navigator smiled. And now? You looked toward the stars. My hands are still empty. The navigator nodded. Good. They're ready to receive tomorrow. Outside. A faint shimmer slowly crossed the observation window. For a brief moment, tiny particles of interstellar dust reflected the distant sun. Each grain glowed softly before disappearing once more into darkness. You remembered the whispering nebula. Even here, far from every cloud, space still carried gentle traces of ancient stars. Nothing truly vanished. It simply traveled farther than human eyes could easily follow. The Serenity quietly crossed the final light years. Ahead, small icy bodies began appearing. The distant outskirts of the solar system. Silent wanderers slowly orbiting the sun. The navigator adjusted the ship's heading almost imperceptibly. No alarms. No announcements. Home should never be entered in a hurry. You smiled. That felt right. The journey had never rushed. Its ending deserved the same kindness as its beginning. Far ahead, the faint glow of the sun slowly illuminated delicate clouds of frozen dust. The darkness itself seemed to soften. The long voyage between the stars was almost complete. The navigator stood quietly beside the observation window. For several peaceful minutes, neither of you moved. Then, they spoke one final sentence before the last chapter. Every ending, they whispered, is simply a doorway that has learned how to welcome you home. The sun continued growing brighter. The stars behind you remained exactly where they had always been. Nothing asked you to choose between them. You realized a traveler never truly leaves the places they have loved. They simply carry them quietly, like constellations, inside the heart. The sun slowly filled the observation window. Not as a blazing giant. Not as the center of a planetary system. Simply as home. Its familiar golden light spread gently through the cabin of the Serenity, warming every quiet corner where countless memories had been born. Ahead, tiny points of light gradually became recognizable worlds. The distant blue-white glow of Neptune. The pale rings surrounding Saturn. The warm amber spark of Jupiter. Far beyond them, a small blue pearl waited patiently. Earth. From this distance, it looked no larger than the blue world you had left behind. The navigators smiled. Every home, they whispered, is someone else's distant star? The sentence settled softly into the silence. You watched Earth grow brighter. Clouds slowly revealed themselves. The deep blue oceans. White swirls of weather. The faint brown and green shapes of continents. Nothing about the planet had changed. Cities still awakened each morning. Forests still breathed. Rain still fell. Children still laughed somewhere beneath those clouds. The world had quietly continued living while you journeyed among the stars. And somehow, that felt beautiful. The Serenity entered the outer reaches of Earth's orbit. No celebrations greeted your arrival. No fanfare echoed through space. Only the familiar rhythm of a world patiently turning beneath the sun. The navigator powered down the long-range stellar maps. One by one, the constellations disappeared from the display. Only the solar system remained. The same place where the journey had begun. The same place, seen through entirely different eyes. You realized something gentle. The universe had never become larger. Your heart had. The navigator stood beside the forward window. For every traveler, they said, there comes a moment when wonder stops living in distant places. A quiet pause. And begins living in ordinary mornings. Outside, the moon drifted silently across Earth's blue horizon. The same moon that countless people would look at tonight. The same moon that had watched every chapter of human history. You smiled. Even familiar things carry infinite mystery when we slow down enough to notice them. The Serenity gently reduced its speed. Below, the atmosphere shimmered like a thin veil of blue crystal. Sunlight scattered through layers of air exactly as it had on the day you departed. Nothing had changed. Everything had changed. The navigator turned toward you one final time. Our journey is complete. You looked through the window. No. The navigator smiled knowingly. It never is. Together. You watched the sunrise spread across Earth. Golden light crossed mountain ranges. Forests awakened beneath drifting clouds. The oceans reflected the morning sky in endless ribbons of silver. For a brief moment, you remembered another ocean. The blue world. The floating forest. The bubble cities. The singing abyss. The gentle giants swimming beneath living stars. They no longer felt far away. Distance had quietly transformed into gratitude. The navigator gently placed a hand upon the navigation console. There is one final tradition aboard the Serenity. You waited. No traveler leaves without offering one gift to the next. A peaceful silence followed. Then you understood. Not an object. Not knowledge. A wish. You closed your eyes. And quietly wished that whoever someday boarded this ship after you would discover their own peaceful universe. Perhaps among oceans. Perhaps among stars. Perhaps simply by looking more carefully at the sky above their own home. The navigator nodded as though they had heard every unspoken word. Then your voyage has fulfilled its purpose. Outside, Earth slowly rotated beneath the ship. Morning expanded across continents. Night gently withdrew beyond the horizon. The same ancient rhythm that had continued for billions of years. You took one final look at the stars. They were still there. Patient. Silent. Waiting for every future traveler. Perhaps one day, another journey would begin. Another quiet ship. Another gentle guide. Another soul searching not for adventure, but for stillness. The Serenity slowly turned toward its peaceful orbital harbor. Its ion engines became silent. The voyage had reached its natural end. Yet something remained. A feeling impossible to measure. The quiet certainty that the universe is far kinder than it first appears, when we choose to travel through it slowly. If this peaceful voyage brought you even a single moment of calm, let its gentle echoes remain with you long after the final page. Whenever the world feels hurried, look up at the night sky. Somewhere beyond the familiar stars, countless quiet wonders are still waiting. And here on Earth, every sunrise is already a miracle. From all of us at Epoch Echoes, thank you for sharing this journey through silence, oceans, and starlight. Until another peaceful voyage begins, may your dreams always find their way home beneath the same stars.